Alright, today we're gonna work on building a tombstone. Just a basic one. This is strictly designed for entry-level assembly packages. So first of all, we got, 6 parts to a tombstone: base plate, top plate, and 4 sides, or at least a typical tombstone. So again, we're going to start with, each part has to be modeled individually. So we're going to go ahead and start with a sketch, new, and this will be a part, not assembly yet. We'll get to that. We'll go through and create a part. Off the front plane, I'm just going to pick up the front plane. I'm going to sketch a box. I'm going to tag it to the triad in the middle. And I'm going to run up, make some dimensions. I'm going to go pretty quick on this. Remember that these lines that are black in color are fully defined. This blue one is not yet. So we'll dimension from here over, and we'll make this 12 inches, 1 by 12. There is our cross section of our sketch, and then we'll hit regenerate, rebuild. I'm going to click on sketch. I'm going to go up to features, extrude that, and we're going to do that 12 inches long, no, 24 inches long. And there is one side plate. Now I'm going to go ahead and save that. Since there's a bunch of other files in here, I'm going to go ahead and right click in this box. I'm going to create new folder. I'm going to label it Tombstone. And then I'm going to put all my files in that file folder. This will be side 1. And I'll save it. Now I got to build another one. So we'll go to File, New, Part, OK. Front plane, sketch, rectangle. Again, exact same process. Smart dimension from here to here is 12 inches. And this to here is 1 inch. So my goal is to make a 12 by 12 tombstone. And then once I have that, you can see all the lines are black, which means they are fully defined. Then we'll go to features. I'm going to extrude that. Again, 24 inches. And this will be side 2. So save. I'm inside that document or file folder called Tombstone, side 1. So now we'll call it, see how I clicked on that and it said side 1 down here in the file name? Now I just got to back and say side 2. Save. Close that out, start a new file, part. Again, front plane. I'm going to sketch a box. Click here. Dimension. Now, since I have 2 sides that are 12 inches and the material thickness is 1 inch, these side plates are going to be 10 inches thick, or width, I should say. And then thickness is still 1 inch. And I'm going to say OK. I'm going to go up to features. I'm going to extrude that 24 inches and say OK. There's my side, my third side. So we will save that. Again, I'm going to click side 2, and down here it's highlighted, and I'm going to backspace, call that 3. Or I could say side 10-1 for 10-inch one side. However you want to name your files. Sometimes having a good plan of how you save your files is going to help you organize your parts in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, close it. I got to build another part, new part, okay. Then I'm going to front plane, sketch, box, another rectangle, smart dimension that. From here to here is all 1 inch by 10 inches. And then I'm going to extrude it 24 inches. So there's my fourth side. And I'm going to save that, go up to the save box. And again, there's always multiple ways to get these things done. Like in this case, you can see that this window is not fully expanded, so if I click this, it'll bring it out to here, like so, and then the close button is here. Now if I hit close and I have not saved it yet, there's a good chance that it'll say, do you want to save all or don't save? If I click save all, it'll ask me to save it as a file name. And in this case, it's another 10 inch. I probably did that. I got to double check that. We'll say that's the second one. Now let's open that file up under this open tab. And I'm going to find what happened to my... So it's not tracking down. Okay, it's looking for assemblies. Look at how this quick filter is set up. This button is the back button for the previous folder. Let's see here. We're going to go to Documents again. You see Tombstone here. I'm going to go into that file folder, but there's no items there. That's because this is looking for assemblies, not parts. If I click part, then it comes up with parts. So I'm going to go, that's just a way to filter what file extension we're using. So I'm going to pull open that 10.2 again, and I'm going to take, if you look at this arrow key, this boss is built off of this sketch. Okay, and I'm going to then click on it. When I click on it, it comes up with a dialog box that says Edit Sketch. Yep, it's set for 10 inches, so we're good. So I'm just going to rebuild this. I got 2 plates that are 12 inches wide, and I got 2 plates that are 10 inches wide. So those are my uprights of my tombstone. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to save it all. Now I got the base plate. I need a new part again. I got to build the base plate. Front view. I'm going to sketch a rectangle. Dimension it. 1 inch thick, and we'll call it 20 inches wide. Okay, and then I'm going to extrude that by 20 inches. So now I got a 20 inch by 20 inch plate. Say OK, and that's my base plate. Very simple. Now I'm going to save it. Go up to the save button up here, and I'll call that my base plate. All within that Tombstone file folder. So all my parts are within one file folder. Sometimes they'll want to, each one will have a part number, and you'll have a file folder for each part number, but in this case I'm putting it all in one folder. And we're going to save that. So there's my base plate. Now I just need a top plate, which should be 12 by 12. So new, I'm going to change it up a little bit on this one. So we're a new part, okay. Again, front plane, sketch, rectangle, and we're going to go across here, dimension it, smart dimension. I'm going to say it's 20 inches by 1 inch. And then I'm going to extrude it 20 inches long. Now we know that that's going to be the exact same as the base, which is not going to be correct. I'm doing that for a purpose. So then we'll save this as the top plate. So now I got all my parts built. Now it's time to assemble them. So what you do is you go to New. Now remember, a part file is different than an assembly file. A part file is just one part with a certain characteristics to it. And then when we bring it into assembly, that's a separate file. And the file extension would be SLD or ASM versus a part file is SLD PRT file. And what I mean by file extension is after the name, it comes up with a dot file extension. And that's what I'm talking about. Each one of these has a different file extension. So now I'm going to build an assembly and bring those parts in. So this is a new file, but it's just bringing all the parts into one assembly. So this is our new assembly. I'm going to bring in the base first. See, it automatically asks you what part you want to bring in. And it's correlated to my file folder where I was building parts. If that did not happen, then you would have to find where that file folder is with your parts in it. Like here, I could grab these parts and it wouldn't be the parts I made. So under Tombstone, I have all my parts. I'm going to start with the base plate, open it, and it brings it in. Now, before I get too much more involved with how to bring everything in, I'm going to make some relationships with, but in assembly they call them mates. Like this surface here, I want to mate with the top plane. Okay? So here's my top plane in Solidworks. So I'm going to lock it to this plane so that they are coincidental, which means this surface and the plane are on the same exact flat surface. So in this case, we click the top plane, we go under the Assembly tab, and we click Mate, which will open up this dialog box. Since I already clicked the top plane previous to this, it already brought that surface into the mate selection. So then the other mate selection would be the top of this part, and when I do that, it's going to force the top plane and this plane to be exactly on the same planes. And we have a problem. Please select a mate type. I want to do coincidental, and we're still going to have a problem. As you can see, I'm having a problem. So cancel out of this mate. What is the problem why I cannot do that? The reason being is because the first part you ever bring into an assembly always comes in a fixed location. That means it cannot be moved around in the space of Solidworks. But there's a way around that. If you see this where my cursor is, the fixed, this F means fixed. That means that part cannot move. It's locked in Solidworks space. Nothing you can do to make this move unless you right click on this and you see the word float. And if you click that, now this part is free to move around within the space. And how I'm moving this part is I clicked on it with the left mouse key, holding it down, and then moving the mouse around to move it up and down and around. Okay? So now let's go back to our mate. We're going to mate this together with, see now there's no selection. Now I can still pick that selection, the surface, but how do I get my top view? You can come over to this feature tree, click on the arrow, and there you have the top view. As you can see, it moved those two surfaces in line with each other, which means they are coincidental, as you see over here. Parallel would be in the same position, they're just the spacing and the surfaces are parallel. That's not what I want to be coincidental. Alright, so now we got that mated to the top. Now I should be able to do the rest of them also to lock the base plate into the space of right, front, and left so it's not skewed. So I'm going to do another mate. I'm going to do the right side. So I picked up the right plane with this one, this surface, which will lock those two together. So now we got that, the right plane, this is the top plane, and the front view will be locked in with this surface. As you can see, front view or front plane has been put in the selection box, and then I'm going to click on this surface, not the line. Don't ever pick up the lines. That's a different mating construct. You want to pick up this surface, and then it forces that into that front plane. So now the base is completely defined. It cannot move. It's almost like locked before, but now if I go up to view orientation up here and I say I want the top view, the front view, or the side views, I can do that and it'll bring it up perpendicular to my site. So let's do the front. There's the front view. If we pick up view orientation, excuse me, this one here, top view, there's a top view. You pick up, you can do isometric view, which is really kind of where I want to be. So with that, I'm going to save this right away because I like to save periodically so that I don't lose my changes. I'm going to save, and of course this is a new file, so it's asking me what file name I want. Now I'm still in Tombstone directory, so it's still without, I don't see any of my parts because it's trying to save it as an SLDASM file. So I'm going to call this Tombstone 1. Now that's an assembly it's saving. So now we got the base plate all locked in place. I want to add more parts to this assembly. So I go up here to the arrow right next to Solidworks. There's a button that says Insert, then drop down to Component, and then there's a flyout. I'm going to do an existing part. And again, it opens up my Tombstone folder, kind of recognizes that. If it was something else or an oddball, you'd have to go find that part. So let's bring in side 1. There's side 1. I'm going to bring in 2 parts at this time. I'm going to go up here again to Insert Component, Existing, and I'm going to bring in side 2. Now these are both my 12-inch plates. Now, in order to rotate this in this environment, the whole assembly, you push down the middle mouse button key and hold it. The middle wheel, you push down, hold down, and then move your mouse around, rotates the whole assembly. If I just want to zoom in and out, I use the scroll wheel, zoom up to zoom out, and then zoom down to bring it in. But if I want to just rotate this part, I can move it by left clicking on it and dragging the mouse around. I can move it, but I can't rotate it. Same with this. You just pick up the part, hover over the part, click and hold down the left key, and you're able to move this part. To rotate it, you hover over, click and hold the right key, and pull down or around with your mouse, and that allows you to move, rotate it. Same with this one. So now I kind of got them in the position they kind of look like they're supposed to be. So what I want to do is make sure that this surface here and this surface here are coincidental, which means they line up perfectly flat. So we go under Mate, and we want to fill in the selection. So I want to go with this surface here, and then I'm going to rotate the whole assembly, and then pick up not the lines, make sure you pick up the surface. See how that pulled those two together? Now they're just locked together on this surface here. I can still move this part around. I'm going to close out the mates. I can still move this part around, but it's always going to be on this plane because they're locked together. And I want to do the same with that part. So I'm going to go up to Mate, and then I'm going to use this surface here and this surface here. That way, now those are all connected that way. Now I know that this is a square tombstone, so I can mate this surface here and this surface as coincidental also. And it brings those two surfaces right together. They will always be locked together in the same face, which then forces us to make sure that this surface and this surface is parallel. But now let's need some more parts. So let's go up here to, let's go ahead and save it. Rebuild and save the document. That's what you want to do because it'll go through and rebuild everything. So then we go back up here to right next to Solidworks. There's an arrow. Well, that's not there. There it is. You want to slide over to Insert, Component, Existing Part. I'm going to bring up side 1, 10-inch. And I'm going to bring in right away the second side. Second side. So now I got two more plates in there. I'm going to rotate this one down about and try to get it somewhat in line. And again, to rotate, you hover over the part, right click and hold the button down, and then move your mouse, allows you to rotate that. Takes a little bit to get used to moving that stuff around. Just to move it without rotating, you use the left key, hover, click on it, and move it. Move the mouse. So we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to mate this surface with the bottom of this surface to lock them together. Say OK. And same with this one. I'm going to use this surface and the bottom of the base, and now those are locked together. Now they're all locked together. We just need to piece them together as a square. So in order to do that, these are the 10-inch sides, so they got to be on the inside. So I'm going to mate this surface with this surface. Okay. Same with this. I'm going to mate this surface with that surface. And as you, I can still move this by clicking the left mouse key, hover over, click it, hold it, and then I can move it left and right, but I cannot move it. I move the whole assembly because these faces are locked together. So all I have left is to lock these two sides together. So this needs to mate with this, coincidental. Same thing for this one, coincidental. And then finally, that surface with here, coincidental. Now if it's done right, this surface in between here should line up perfectly. Now the box is complete, sitting on top of the base plate. I'm going to close out the mates. I'm going to save again, periodically saving my work. Rebuild, that's fine. Now I got to insert another component, the top, which I said was going to be messed up, right? And it looks that way. But I could still add some mates, so we'll go up to mate. I know that I want this surface with this surface locked together. Now, the question is, since this is so much bigger, it's really not correct, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this surface and this surface, but instead of being coincidental, I'm going to pick up parallel. I can either pick up over here or I could pick up here. Parallel just means that those two surfaces are always going to be in line, or at least parallel. I can still move it, I just can't rotate it or spin it. If I spin the whole box, it spins the top because that surface and this surface wants to be parallel. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and save it. We got a problem. This top is way too big. We know that it should be 10 by 10, 12 by 12. What is it? I forget. I can come up here to do a smart dimension, reference dimension right here. In assembly, I can use reference dimensions, not smart dimensions. And I can click this surface to this surface, and it tells me that's 12 inches. Now this is not a controlling dimension, this is only a reference dimension. Just something I can use in assemblies to verify what that width is. So basically my top has to be 12 by 12. I'm going to quick dimension this way to make sure that that's 12 inches also. And again, this is only reference dimensions. These are not dimensions that control the width or size of the tombstone. So this top plate has to be 12 by 12. So I'm going to go ahead, save my work, rebuild, make sure it's saved. I can right click on the part that's not correct, and there is a folder, file folder up here. It says open part. When I click on that, it'll open up the part file so that it's back to where I designed it originally. So the assembly will still be open in the background. There's multiple layers of windows open, but when I click on this, it'll open up that part directly. Now, I need to change this. I have to change both the sketch. If you click on this arrow, that's the sketch that built this boss. I can right click once and then go up to edit sketch, and you have 20 inches in here. That needs to be 12 inches. And if you hit rebuild, now you got a plate that's 20 by 12. Well, in order to get the other way, I got to go and right click on the boss now, and up here it says edit feature, and that gives me the dialog to change it from 20 inches to 12 inches. Now that top plate should be correct, 12 by 12. We're going to hit rebuild, save, close. This close, not this one. This closes Solidworks completely. So you want to close here, which only closes the window, and then it should take us, it's asking us, should we rebuild the assembly? And I'm going to say yes. So now that we rebuilt the assembly, you can see that the top plate is a lot smaller. Now we can add the mate. Go under Assembly tab, go under Mates. I'm going to mate this surface and this surface as coincidental, and then I'm going to mate this surface and this surface as coincidental. And there's our tombstone. Well, we still have a little bit of an issue. It looks like it's crooked on our base plate. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these dimensions. And how you do is just highlight them and then either hit the delete key on the keyboard or highlight them, right click, and it should say delete. But it's not. So just highlight it, hit the delete key on the keyboard. And that gets rid of those reference dimensions. Now we still have a problem with this not being, it's locked to the face of the base plate, but it's not locked in any way to orientation of the faceplate. The way we can do this is we use an advanced mate feature called width. And what width does, if we go to mate, it's asking what kind of, these are your standard mates. And then you have what's advanced mates down here. So click on the arrow key and it brings up some more options to do. So we're going to do width, and what that allows us to do, it opens up 2 tab selections to highlight. I want this thing centered on the base plate. And what's good about that is, versus dimensioning it, is because if I change the base plate by a ½ inch or an inch, it'll automatically update the assembly to keep this tombstone in the center of the plate at all times. So the first tab selection, that blue section here, is like, I want it centered between this face and this face on the same part, okay? And then the second tab is the part you're trying to center on it. So it'd be this face and this face. And immediately it centers those 2 faces in the middle of the part. So we constrained it that way, constraints, but I can still move it this way. I can't move it any other way, but I can move it this way and this way. So we use the exact same width, and we pick up this surface and the other side, and then the other tab selection would be corresponding to this face and this face. And now it is locked to the center of our base plate. Close out mates. I'm going to hit save. And basically that's our basic tombstone. Now, like I said, I put these width constraints on, or mates on. So if I right click on the base plate, open that file, and let's say I want to change that to, I'm going to edit the sketch, right click on it, hit edit sketch, change this to 25 inches. Okay, I rebuild, and I hit the rebuild button up here. Now we got 25 inches by 20 inches. I'm going to right click on the boss, I'm going to edit the feature, and I'm going to make that 25 inches. Now instead of me going back, save this. Now, since me going back to the assembly to readjust, I would be off 5 inches on center. But with us doing the width mate, when I go back to, I'll just close out this part, and it's asking me to rebuild the assembly, yes. It automatically recenters the part within a 25 by 25 inch base plate. So that's a very useful mate in order to do that. Rebuild, I'm going to save. Over here you can see in the assembly we have all of our components that are in this particular assembly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different parts in this assembly. And the reason I build each one of these separately is because we could have 2 different setups on these plates with a whole different set of holes and vices mounted, whichever. So I'm going to go back and change this base plate to 20 by 20. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to open that part, I'm going to edit, right click, and then edit the feature. That's going to be back down to 20 inches on the boss. Then I got to modify the sketch, right click, edit feature, sketch. I'm going to change that to 20 inches. And then I'm going to rebuild, save, close. It's asking me to rebuild my assembly, yes. And now I got my 20 by 20 plate back. Save. And that is basically how we build a tombstone. Very basic. We have no holes in it. We have no alignment pins or anything like that, which we'll get into future videos. Hopefully this helps. You understand how to put an assembly together, the basic assembly. If you have questions, please make a comment. I'm going to close out.